first of all, a warm welcome on this spring, I think for most of us, day. This is the last in a series of 3 webinars that have been brought to you by the Leading Women at Hayes network. This is the network that we've set up at Hayes to really reach out to our external network of professional women, whereby we identify trending topics and themes that we're seeing through our engagement with yourselves as largely individuals and professionals, as opposed to us engaging with you in a kind of an employer capacity. We wanted to take some of the insights that we're seeing, some of those trends and themes, and really give you the opportunity and space to just self-reflect and say, well, what does this mean for me? We are committed to being your lifelong partner and a trusted partner as you navigate your careers, and creating these opportunities. We hope we'll find we hope you'll find them, helpful. We are recording this session just by way of housekeeping. Kirsten's going to be speaking for about 30 minutes or so, and then we will have time for questions. If we don't get through all the questions, we typically don't, because our audience tends to be very engaged on the topics. We will have a look through and see whether there is enough themes in there or things that we want to kind of do a bit of a round 2 with Kirsten. So don't worry if we don't get around to your question today. We can always kind of regroup on this. So the session's being recorded, and everyone who is attending today will have a copy of the recording sent to them, together with a link to any slides that Kirsten will be using, and a link to our Leading Women at Hayes LinkedIn group to allow you to carry on the conversation. So without further ado, let me introduce Kirsten. I had the absolute pleasure of working with Kirsten at Hayes for best part of 25 years, both of us. So she's certainly steeped in the dynamics of the world of work and some of the things we're going to be talking about today. But she left the business fairly recently to actually really continue a passion of hers, which she was running in parallel. It was a side hustle, and now it's a main hustle, around career coaching. And she is really making a very kind of good name for herself in one-to-one coaching, particularly around the realization of future-proofing your thinking to enable you to make the most of opportunities that are presented tomorrow in what feels like a very busy and complex world at the moment. So this is all about you. It's about taking the time to reflect on where you are today, and crucially for today's session, where you want to be tomorrow, and future-proofing your thinking. So without further ado, Kirsten, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, everyone. It is great to be here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So I'm going to be talking today about future-proofing your thinking. I will share my screen in just a second to go through some slides. I would encourage everyone throughout this talk to really reflect, really have a think about how this impacts you. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start with a question that for me, when I very first encountered this question, it was probably one of the most uncomfortable questions that I ever encountered. Because if we're going to future-proof the way that our mind works, we need to get really clear on where we are now. So let me share my screen and let's go through. So,
and Kirsten, while you're doing that, because it's going to come live, if anyone has any questions, please do post them in the Q&A tab that's at the bottom of your screen. I'll be having a close look at those as we go through, and then probably bundling some of the questions to Kirsten as we get into the Q&A. Kirsten, sorry, over to you.
Brilliant. That's absolutely fine. Thank you so much. Can you all see my screen okay? You should be able to just see that first slide.
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to start, as I said, with that, what can feel like a little bit of an uncomfortable question. We won't stay uncomfortable, don't worry at all. We will move on, but let's just start with this question. So the question is this. Imagine this. You've reached the end of your life and you're reflecting upon the choices that you've made, you're reflecting on the paths that you've taken. Now picture meeting the version of yourself that you could have become had you seized every opportunity, had you been able to move through your fear and self-doubt, and had you wholeheartedly believed in your abilities. Would that version of you be the same as the person that you are becoming on the path that you are on now? Now, when I first encountered this question, the reason that it was, I think, such a difficult question for me is because the answer at that time was no. Not only was I not on the path to take me to that version of me, I mean, I wasn't even close, you know? I wasn't seizing half of the opportunities, and I certainly didn't believe in myself. And it was a bit of a wake-up call, you know? I had to just think about, well, okay, what am I going to do about this? Can I do anything about this? Let's figure this out. So I started on a little bit of a path, and the path took me down a really, really interesting self-discovery and personal development that has been incredible. And I'm hoping to bring just a little bit of that to you today. So one of the things that I realized when I was going down this path is that we humans, we make decisions every day, every single day, that our future self would not necessarily thank us for. So for example, the decision that I made a couple of nights ago to eat my way through an entire pack of those cookies, you know, not the little packs of cookies, I'm talking about the huge, big, chewy, delicious ones. They are my Achilles heel. The decision that I made to eat my way through that entire pack, I can tell you that me today is not happy about me making that decision. And then there's little, you know, other little ones. What about the decisions that we make when we're out? You know, you can see everyone there having a great time out. And we make that decision to have, let's just have one more, you know, let's just have one more drink. The party version of us thinks it's the best decision she's ever made. And then there's the hungover version of us, the hungover version of us that is not happy about that decision at all. In fact, she's fuming. And she's saying, never, ever, ever again will I make that decision to have just one more. Now, look, they, of course, you know, they're fun examples. But what about some of the other things, you know? What about the decisions that we make, maybe to put off investing in our health and fitness? You know, we'd absolutely love to be a bit healthier, to be a bit fitter, but maybe we don't quite find the time, you know, we'll get to it tomorrow or next week, or in my case, you know, next year, as it was at the time. Or maybe what about difficult conversations? We all encounter difficult conversations throughout our life at some point, and sometimes we have them, and sometimes we can shy away. We know that it's the right thing to do to have that conversation, but we're busy, you know, and we might find a way to just put it off. Or maybe it's something like starting a business, you know, the thing that I've just done. Maybe we've got this passion project that we would love to do, and we keep saying to ourselves, oh, if only, you know, or one day I'll do it. Maybe it's to become a confident speaker. The amount of people that I speak to who would absolutely love develop the skill of speaking, whether it's just to speak up in a meeting and, you know, to get their point heard, or whether it's to get up on stage and speak in front of hundreds of people. Everyone that I speak to would love to have some version of that, but isn't always doing it. They might be putting it off. And why is that? Why do we have these desires that we don't necessarily act on? So the question is, okay, so we often make decisions that maybe our future selves might not be entirely happy with. What's actually going on in there? You know, what's going on inside of our mind? We can often think, and certainly this was me, we can often think that, oh, well, I'm just being a bit rubbish. I've not gone to the gym because I'm just being a bit lazy, or I'm not having that conversation because, oh, you know, I'm not being great. And we can tell ourselves that it's because in some way we're not good enough to do whatever it is we want to do. But is that really what's going on? Now, let me introduce you to the stranger. Now, there was a large study carried out at UCLA, and the study viewed participants in an MRI and asked them to think about various different people. So they were asked to think about people that were known to them, friends, family, loved ones, you know, people that were really known to them. They were also asked to think about people that they didn't know. You know, they gave them names of politicians, the names of TV personalities. They might be vaguely aware of them, but they didn't know them. They also asked them to think about their future selves. And what the study showed is that when we are thinking about our future self, the same part of our brain lights up as when we're thinking about the people that we don't know. Now, you would think that on some level, that future version of us, we've got some form of connection with them. You know, it's us. Surely we're connected to them. But this study concluded that at a brain level, our future self is essentially a stranger, someone who's vaguely familiar, but not known. So is it any wonder then that we can find it difficult to make decisions with our future self in mind, particularly when those decisions may require us to stretch ourselves, you know, they may require us to get out of our comfort zone. Now, stretching ourselves for our loved ones we'll do every single day of the week, absolutely. But we're far less likely to do that difficult stuff if it's for a stranger. And now we've just found out that our future self essentially is a stranger. So the first thing that I want to say is, if you're not doing things that you would like to do, first of all, give yourself a break. It is not because you're in some way, you know, not being good enough to make those decisions. It's really, really, really difficult to make decisions that push you out of your comfort zone when your brain can't connect to the version of you that you're trying to make those decisions for. But what if we could connect to that version? What if we could develop a relationship with the future version of ourselves? What would that do? Would it make a difference? You know, could it even work? Well, research is now showing that there are significant benefits to being able to connect with our future selves. Recent research in psychology has found that developing a deep connection with ourself, our future self, has a profound impact on our motivation. It has a profound impact on our self-esteem. We're able to manage our boundaries. We develop greater resilience, and our overall life satisfaction is enhanced. There was a study carried out by Dr. Hal Hershfield that found that participants who viewed their future self, even just in an image, so they had that, you know, that imaging technology where you put your photo in and it artificially ages you. It's terrible technology. He just did that to the people in the study, and those people went away and started increasing the investments that they were making in their future finances, just through seeing that. Now, there was another study conducted by Dr. Daniel Bartels at the University of Chicago. And in that study, they found that participants who connected with their future self, they were more likely to exercise. They were more likely to eat healthier. The study showed that by envisioning our future self and developing a relationship with that version of us, we are more motivated to take action that aligns with our desired future. Connecting with our future self enhances our resilience in the face of adversity. By envisioning a successful and fulfilled version of ourselves, we develop a sense of purpose, a greater sense of purpose and direction that helps us navigate challenges with greater ease. In essence, our future self becomes our source of inspiration, our source of guidance. It becomes our coach, our confidant, our cheerleader. Our future self is there supporting us as we're going through our journey and as we're dealing with the sometimes difficult obstacles that we can face in life. So it's really, really clear that there are significant benefits to creating a relationship with the future version of ourselves. So how do we do it? You know, the big question, how do we actually do that? So the first thing that we need to do is just have, I would say, a little bit of a recap about how the mind works, because we need to understand what's happening inside of our mind so that we can speak to our mind in a way that it will listen. So I'm sure that most of you on here will have probably seen this or some version of this diagram at some point. It shows us the difference between our conscious mind and our sub or unconscious mind. Our conscious thoughts and actions, the bit above the sea level there, they make up a fraction of our mental processes. Some say 5%, some say 10%. The number changes because it's impossible to know exactly what that number is, but the narrative is always the same. The conscious part of our mind is significantly smaller, slower, and less powerful than the subconscious part of our mind. However, the vast majority of our behaviors, our beliefs, our habits, our emotions, all of this is happening at a sub or unconscious level. Okay, so why is this important? Why is this important for what we're doing here today? And how does this impact our decisions? Well, there's been numerous studies now in both neuroscience and psychology that continually demonstrate that our brains process information and make decisions at an unconscious level before our conscious mind is even aware that we've done it. Now, when I first found this out, I had to let that sink in. We're making decisions before we're even aware that we're making decisions. That didn't make sense to me when I first heard that, because I'd spent many an hour, many a day, a week sometimes, mulling over various decisions that I needed to make. So if I'm making the decision unconsciously, then what part is my conscious mind playing in the whole decision-making process? Well, the research is telling us that the part that our conscious mind, the part that plays, is essentially to justify the unconscious decision that we've already made. Our conscious mind essentially constructs a narrative to explain the decision that our unconscious mind has made. Now, I found that absolutely fascinating. Furthermore, research is also telling us that the way that we make decisions is largely emotional. Logic is not playing a huge part in it. There was a study that showed the profound influence of emotions on the brain. The people within the study, the emotional part of their brain had been damaged. The logical part was working fine, but the emotional part had been damaged. Now, they were provided with all of the necessary logical information to be able to make a decision. However, even though they had all of that information, they still struggled to make the decision. The study found that emotions play such a crucial role in guiding our choices, providing us with valuable information in order for us to make the decision. This is further supported by numerous MRI studies where you can see that emotional responses to stimuli are occurring within the brain before the participant consciously even recognized that the stimuli was there. Unbelievable. So when it comes to decision making, we often assume that we make choices based on conscious, logical reasoning. However, we're now becoming increasingly aware that our decisions are being made unconsciously and they're being made with our emotions. This is playing a huge part. So when we know this, it then helps us to understand how we need to start communicating with our mind in order to get our mind working for us. So if our unconscious mind is actually the one driving the decisions, and we know that emotion is driving that, then what can we now do? What can we now do to get this working for us? Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that our subconscious is primarily concerned with our safety, not our happiness. We assume that because our conscious, logical mind is thinking about what we want in order to be happy, we assume that our subconscious is doing the same. It's not. Happiness doesn't factor a great deal into the subconscious part of our mind. It's deciding based on what it believes is required to keep us safe. That is its primary job. And how does it keep us safe? Well, there's a number of ways. but one that holds a lot of influence, is that it wants to keep us in what is known. It wants to keep us in what is emotionally familiar, even if what is emotionally familiar is not the best option for us. Logically, there may be a better option, but if the better option feels emotionally unfamiliar, then our subconscious mind won't want us to go there. Our subconscious mind fears the unfamiliar. So, okay, where do we go from here? Okay, how on earth do we start to future-proof and get our beautiful and occasionally crazy mind working for us? There is a way, absolutely. We just need to start speaking to our subconscious mind rather than our conscious mind. And the first step to doing that is by giving our subconscious mind a vision of where we're going. So we're just going to start that a little bit now. I would just ask you, if you've got a pen and paper there in front of you, I would just ask you to start to create whatever it is you're wanting to do, whatever it is you're wanting to work on. Think about yourself in 12 months' time and think about where you would like to be in a particular area of your life. And start to write down, okay, that version of me that is going to have achieved whatever it is you want to achieve, what is it that she's going to achieve? Write a couple of things down, then write down, okay, well, what feelings? How is that going to feel? Because remember, we're tapping into the emotional part of our mind. How is that going to feel on a day-to-day basis when you've achieved that? And then start to expand it out. Okay, so I know what I want to do, and I know how I think it's going to feel. Well, okay, what kind of people am I surrounded by? You know, who's there for me? Who's in my circle? Think about, you might want to expand your circle to include some different people. So what kind of time does that version of you spend on herself, working on herself? What kind of time does she spend reflecting? You know, spending time just literally thinking and reflecting about where she's at. Where does she go, you know, on a day-to-day basis? Really start to bring this to life. Obviously, you know, we're only here for a couple of minutes today looking at this exercise, but what I would encourage you all to do after this call, whenever you've got time, is really flesh out the detail for that. Really get to create whatever that version of you is. Put everything down. If it's a new job that you want, okay, what is that job? What does that look like? What does it feel like to have that job? What are you earning in that job? What people are you surrounded by? What meetings are you going in? Who are you impacting? Who are you influencing? There's so much here. And the more detail that you can get in there, the more you can emotionally connect with what it is that you're creating. So now that we've started, you know, we've started to get that vision, we know how to get that vision, what do we now do? Okay, so creating your future self. It all starts with your why. Some of you may have read the amazing book from Simon Sinek, Start With Why. If you haven't, I would certainly encourage you to read it. It is a great book. Your why drives your how and your what. Now, what this means is, whatever it is that you are wanting to do, why do you want to do it? So let's say, for example, you want to get fit. What is your why behind that? Maybe you want to get fit because you want to run around and play more with your children. Now, that is a why that the emotional part of your mind can get behind. So create a why that you can have an emotional connection to. Because your why will then drive your how, which is what you're going to do, and then your what, which is the results that you will then get as a result of what it is you're doing. So remember, we are tapping into this subconscious part of our mind, and we are getting really emotional about what we're creating. The next step is visualization. I cannot understate the power of visualization here. We need to give our subconscious mind a roadmap. We are telling it where to go, and we're telling it how to get there. We're using mental imagery, mental rehearsal. This has been studied extensively in the field of neuroscience and sports psychology. It's essentially about giving your mind this very clear roadmap of how to get to where you want to go. And giving it, most importantly, you're giving it in a way that your mind will understand. So you may have heard of the piano experiment. So there's been numerous experiments of this type, but the piano one is quite famous, where they took two groups of participants. And one group, they played scales on the piano. They just literally played up and down with their fingers like this, up and down on the piano for several hours each day for a week. Doesn't sound like a fun experiment. I imagine you're going to get cramp in your hands doing that. I wouldn't have fancied doing it, but that's what the first group did. The second group, there was no piano, no hand movement. They just simply visualized doing the scales. They just visualized it for the same length of time, several hours each day for a week. Now, at the end of that experiment, they scanned their brains and they had a look to see what was going on inside the brains of the study participants. Now, as you might expect, the ones that had been playing the piano, the part of their brain that was responsible for that movement had grown. More neurons were there quite significantly because they've been doing it for several hours every day. Fine, you would expect to see that. In the group that hadn't moved at all, and the group that were just simply visualizing the movement, they found that that part of their brain had also increased. Not only that, it had increased at exactly the same rate as the other group. In fact, when you held their brain scans together, you couldn't tell the difference between who had actually played the piano and who had simply visualized playing the piano. There is absolutely no doubt that visualization has a significant impact on our brain. Multiple sports personalities credit visualization with being a part of their success. The important thing with visualization is not just to visualize the end goal. It's to visualize each step that we take to get there. Remember, we're creating a roadmap. We have to show all the turns in the road. We have to show all the steps that we're going to take to get there. Serena Williams would say that she would visualize every one of her shots. Michael Phelps always said that he would visualize every stroke. But when you do this, when you've got a strong visualization practice, you are showing your subconscious mind where you're going. And when you do it repeatedly, then your subconscious mind starts to learn, because the subconscious mind learns through repetition. So next we have, be prepared to allow yourself to get uncomfortable, sometimes really uncomfortable. If you're looking to make a change, if you are looking to change any part of your life, it is going to require you to get out of your comfort zone. And Josie talked about this, in her session last month, getting into that stretch zone. It can be scary. It absolutely can. Anything that requires that kind of change is, because as we've already established, our subconscious mind wants us to be in the familiar. It loves the familiar, but we need to show it that actually we are okay to get uncomfortable. So the more that we can practice being uncomfortable, the more that we show our mind that it is safe to be uncomfortable. And it doesn't matter whether it's physically uncomfortable or emotionally uncomfortable, we're just showing our mind that actually there's safety in the unknown. So, for example, I have a cold shower every morning. Believe me, that's uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable, but I know it's good for me. I know it's good for my cardiovascular system. I know it's good for me to do something that gets uncomfortable, and I always feel good afterwards, always. So the more that I do it, the more that my mind can see that there is safety in that uncomfortable feeling. So next, keep your promises to yourself. Now, this is an important one. We often break promises to ourselves without realizing, I'll go to the gym. Oh, actually, no, it's a bit late. I'm not going to go to the gym. That's a promise that we've broken and we've not even thought about it. So if you imagine, if you went for dinner every week with a friend of yours, and every single week that friend was either late or didn't turn up, you'd stop trusting them. You'd stop trusting what they said. It is exactly the same thing with ourselves. When we break our promises to ourselves, we lose our self-trust. And when we lose our self-trust, our subconscious mind is no longer going to be working for us. Next one, become very aware of your self-talk. Again, I know Josie talked about this a lot when she was talking about the inner critic. Our self-talk is hugely important. Your subconscious mind will believe what you repeatedly tell it. It won't question whether it's true. It won't question whether it's serving you or not. It will listen to what you say and it will believe what you repeatedly tell it. So if you can, I would encourage you, hopefully you'll have the opportunity, if you can, give yourself the space to become aware of what your self-talk actually is, what you're saying to yourself. If you can, even if you can just spend a few minutes with no distractions, which I know is very difficult in the very busy world that we all live in today. But if you can, try and make some time to just spend a little bit of time with your mind, because you may be surprised at what comes through. I've been into personal development now for well over a decade, and I was shocked when I allowed myself to spend time with zero distractions, not even music on, zero distractions, and just allowing my mind to wander and do whatever it wants to do. I was quite shocked at what my ongoing narrative was. So I would encourage you to allow yourselves to do that, give yourself the time, because awareness is the first step to change. So become aware of what's going on in your mind so that you can start to change it and you can factor that in to the future version of yourself that you are wanting to create. The next one is nourish your body and your mind. So important. What we put into our body and our mind, whether it's what we're physically consuming, eating and drinking, or whether it's what we're mentally and emotionally consuming with what we're watching and what we're reading, this has a direct impact on how we think and how we feel on a day-to-day basis. There's so many studies now on the mind-body connection and how all of that works. What's happening with our body physically impacts our mind. What's happening with our mind psychologically and emotionally impacts our body. So we want to get really, really intentional about what we are consuming and ensure that what we are doing is nourishing. Start to ask yourself the question, is this nourishing? Is this nourishing for my mind? Is this nourishing for my body? And next, and finally, take action every single day. Now, all of these things that we've just talked about doing are incredible, but they will go largely unnoticed as far as your mind is concerned and as far as your results is concerned if you are not taking consistent action. And I've put there, take imperfect action every day, because it's never going to be perfect. And we often wait until it is, I just want to learn something more. I just want to do another course before I put myself out there. I just want to have one more success in something at work before I go for the promotion. I just want to. We all do it. We all do it. That's perfectionism, It is not going to be perfect. We just need to take the action now. Whatever it is you're wanting to do, you're ready. You're ready. Whatever it is you're wanting to do, just start by taking the first step, because action breeds action. Just like inaction breeds inaction. Just start taking the steps. Okay, so now that we have got the steps, now that we've started to create that vision of where we're going, of who we're becoming, I would encourage you to ask yourself this question, and I would encourage you to ask it often. What would she do? Of course, I've put he, they, whichever personal pronoun is right for you. For me, it's she, and I regularly check in with myself and say, okay, here and now, that version of me, what would she do? Because now that you have an emotional connection with that version of you that you're strengthening continually, this question will help you with your decision making. But I think maybe more importantly, it will also show you if you've gone a little off course. And we all go off course. We all go off course, you know? So if you have, then you know that the reason that you've gone off course is because your subconscious mind is just taking you somewhere else. And it's doing that because it may believe that somewhere else is a little safer for you. So if you notice through asking this question that you've gone a little off course, just reassure your mind. Get back to your why. Strengthen the emotional connection with where you're wanting to go, and you will get back on track. So you now have a map of where you're wanting to go, and you know how to get there. You know how to be much more intentional about where you're wanting to go, and you have your guiding question to continually ensure that you are on track. Now, this is how we create and embody the future version of ourselves. This is how we remove blocks and develop resilience. This is how we get really intentional about how we want to live our lives. And this is how we future-proof our thinking. Thank you.
Kirsten, that was amazing. I've been taking notes, a lot of them. And there's some questions which I'm going to put to you, but
shall I stop sharing us?
Yeah, stop sharing.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, really, really great. I know that you are very kindly saying if anyone has any questions that they can reach out to you.
Of course.
So we'll make sure your contact details are on the follow-up. A number of people have asked, is the recordings available? I said at the beginning, yes, they most definitely are. Perhaps another question that's come in is, are there any resources that you have found particularly helpful? You mentioned a couple of academic studies there. Someone in the Q&A mentioned the chimp paradox as being a useful resource. Yes. So the chimp paradox. If there are any other resources or kind of maybe podcasts or easy to read books that really help with this, please, perhaps you could put a couple of recommendations and we follow up with people.
I can make a list and send that straight to you. Yeah, because there's so many, there's amazing resources out there now. So yeah, I will definitely do that.
Lovely, great. So lots of thank yous coming in as well, very practical, and very kind of, there's a process here, isn't there? So yes. there's some questions that have come in and I'm going to broadly cluster them. And one of the questions is, you spoke about visualizing the why you want to be or what you want to be. A couple of questions on that. First of all, if you know what you want to be, but you can't answer the why, is that a problem? Have they got to come together? And then linked to that is the how, in terms of the steps. You spoke about Serena Williams, picturing every stroke she took. So you kind of know where you want to be, but you can't necessarily understand the why am I feeling like this? And then what steps do I actually have to take in order to help me to start taking those actions? Could you perhaps address those 2 points?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the why is definitely an important part in the process because we're wanting to be able to connect with the emotions around, and the emotions are generally connected to the why. Once we've found the why, the how usually opens up. So don't worry too much about the how at all, because that will come. But I would definitely encourage everyone to be able to find the why. So if the why is not immediately coming, I would say go back to the step of allowing yourself some time and some space for your mind sort of do its own thing. Allow yourself some time and space for just whatever is the narrative inside of your mind to come through, because that is going to help you to understand what is going on inside of your mind. I would also say, and I'll send this to you as a resource, there will be some great coaching questions that can be asked around that to try and tease out the why of whatever it is you are wanting to achieve. Because there can be, and this is a really interesting point, because there can be the things that we genuinely want to do because it's part of our soul and our being. And then there's things that maybe we want to do because maybe our ego wants us to do it, you know? And that is a whole different thing, because that, you know, when it's something that is slightly ego driven, it's very often coming from a place of a wounded part of us, rather than coming from a place of just who we were born to be and becoming that version of who we are. And that's where the coaching questions can really help to be able to, I would say, pick between those two so that you can get onto the path of becoming, you know, who you were always born to be.
Thank you. And again, another kind of a couple of questions here that I think are linked. First of all, one of the questions that's come in is, how do you overcome self-limiting beliefs? And how do you curb overthinking to create this space you're talking about where your brain can kind of fly, if you like, and your subconscious brain can almost kind of take over?
Yeah, absolutely.
Practically, how do you do that?
Yeah, and it's difficult, you know, and if you're an overthinker, which, you know, sort of I think we all are from time to time, you know, we absolutely all can be. And of course, this is about us trying to come out of the logical part, because it's the logical part that's overthinking. The unconscious part isn't, you know, that's not doing that at all. It's the conscious part of our brain that is overthinking. There are some great relaxation techniques out there to just try and get into a space of relaxing, meditating, just to try and help ourselves to get into more that subconscious part of our mind. But I would say there is, with the sort of overthinking and with the questioning, again, it's probably going to be a little bit more around finding out for that individual what is causing that to happen, because we all have different reasons, you know, that's going on underneath for why that's happening. So as a general response, I would say within the resources, having a look at what is going to help your mind to relax. But I would also encourage you to have a think about looking into, okay, do you want to delve deeper? Because there's always something going on deeper. Do you want to delve deeper? And that, again, is something that you would be much more likely to do on a one-to-one.
Lovely. Thank you for that. And actually, everybody, thank you for dropping in. There's quite a lot of resources that are being proposed in the chat. So we'll you can see it. So we'll capture some of those. I just wanted to relay to you, actually, by way of thank you, Kirsten. I think we've got some of the themes there, and obviously there's some coaching questions that can come through, some of these resources around this process that you very mindfully and purposely you're suggesting we go through. I haven't done that before, so this is going to be interesting. But there was just a comment that I thought was really interesting. And yeah, here we are. This is from Antonia. And I think this is a really nice thank you to you, Kirsten. It says, I've heard all the principles of this before, but for some reason, the delivery of this session, maybe it's the studies, have it's just another chat's just come up. Basically, what the feedback was, I've heard it all before, but the way you've delivered it, Kirsten, has made it really land well and really practical and motivational and relevant. So thank you for doing that. So that's going to be my thank you to you. They've made it familiar ideas, clicking away they haven't done before. Amazing session. Thank you so much. So Antonia, I will take your thank you to Kirsten, relay that on all of our parts. So just as a reminder, recordings coming around, resources will be coming around. Kirsten, you've been absolutely amazing. To keep the conversation going, everyone who's on this call, I invite you to join our Leading Women at Hayes LinkedIn group. We share a lot of resources, insights and tools on there. I am sincerely hoping that we will get back to face-to-face networks. If you are in the vicinity of a Hayes office, or you know someone who is working at Hayes, particularly some of our experienced professional female colleagues, we are doing quite a lot of community engagement work at the moment on a tactical basis within our offices in other locations. So please do join the network, get in touch with your nearest and most well-known senior female colleague at Hazel who will know a lot about what's happening within the network. If you don't know someone, give me a call, Yvonne Smythe. I chair the network and I will put you in touch with the right person. But let's keep the conversation going. This brings us to the end of this particular series. We are going to be restarting again in September, and I suspect, Kirsten, we're going to be inviting you to come back again because that was fabulous. So thank you. As I say, watch out for local events near you. Please do join the LinkedIn group in the meantime, and stay in touch with us. See whether we can support you personally, as we've done today, I hope, professionally in any way that we can. Look forward to keeping in touch, and enjoy June, everyone, when it comes, and hopefully our summer. Kirsten, thank you on behalf of everybody.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.